Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing. And today, we've got a new choke out here to test, and it's definitely one that a lot of you guys have requested to see, and it's one that I've been wanting to pick up for a good while now as well to see what it could do, and to maybe kind of get an idea as we do our testing as to if it's actually worth it, or if you should just kind of stick to your more traditional stock chokes. So we're definitely going to test it with a bunch of different loads to see what happens, and maybe get an idea if it's worth it or not. So as for the setup we've got out here today, I brought out the Remington 1187 here, which has been a very proven buckshot kind of patterning setup. But as for a choke, I picked up one of these, a Kicks Buck Kicker full choke. Now this is the full. You can get them in light full and extra full, so this one's right in the middle of their range. And to the best of my measurements, the inside diameter of this choke measures out to be right at a 693 constriction, so very typical type of full choke range between that 690 to 695 constriction. But is there anything actually special about this that will perform better than a stock full choke will? I don't know. We're just going to have to do a bunch of tests with it and see what happens. But to start off our testing, the ammunition we've got out here today is some of the Federal Power-Shok buckshot loads. So a very common loading that a lot of people use. These ones are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 15 pellet magnum load of double-aught buck, moving about 10 feet per second. And it's been so long since we've tested these, I don't remember exactly how well they performed through that stock full choke. I think they were pretty average, definitely nothing special from what I can remember. So if we see a really nice looking pattern today, then we might actually be onto something with that Kicks choke there. But either way, a very common, very standard loading that a lot of people are familiar with. But as for the test today, everything is going to be the same as usual. I got the big sheet of paper set up at 40 yards. I've also got the chronograph so we can get our velocity, and I have some templates that we can lay up over our pattern as well to get that better reference point as to how they would have done in those real life type of scenarios. So I'm definitely curious to see how this choke actually does and if it is an immediate noticeable difference or not. So let's go over here and get you guys to view this target and take the shot and just see what kind of a pattern we're actually able to get. Okay, so that shell gave us 1178 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1210, so we are just a little bit under that, but still that is well within the realm of reason for kind of where these shells might want to live at, around that 1200 feet per second mark. So I don't think there's anything too strange as far as velocity goes up here, but how did it actually pattern down there at 40 yards? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And the white dot was my point of aim. The paper is 36 inches wide by probably about 40 inches tall. And I think we centered our pattern up pretty well here. And we do have all 15 pellets on the paper. I did measure the farthest 2 points across, which was the top left pellet all the way over to that far bottom right pellet, which gave us a total spread of right at 24 inches. Now, I do think those 2 pellets over on the right are kind of flyers, so the main area of our pattern is smaller than that. But with that being a 24-inch spread at 40 yards, I think that is pretty much right what they're claiming we should be able to see. I want to say that package says you should see consistent 20 to 24-inch groups at 40 yards, and that is pretty much right in there. And I do think this is better than what we had seen previously out of these shells. They weren't terrible performers from what I can remember, but for a pretty standard run-of-the-mill, not anything really too special about it buckshot shell, that's not bad right there whatsoever. Now, the one thing I am seeing though is, yet again, it's been kind of a theme recently for buckshot testing that we've done, but we have a lack of pellets in our core area. As you can see, that white dot was my point of aim, and I think that's pretty much where our core should be, and there's no pellets in there. There's a good, probably close to 10-inch circle there where there's not a single pellet, and I would have liked to seen at least 1 or 2 pellets kind of fill in that gap. So this pattern is definitely not perfect. We do have a couple little clumps of pellets, but I do think just based on this initial first test, that buck kicker full choke might actually be doing a little bit of something for our pattern. Obviously, we need to do a bunch more testing to confirm if that's the case or not, but let's throw a couple templates up here and get a little bit better reference point as to how this pattern actually performed in a real life scenario. Okay, so here's our 10-inch circle, and this really shows that void right in the core area that I was talking about. Now, we do have 4 pellets, and just barely 4 pellets based on that bottom pellet that just snuck in, which 4 to 5 pellets seems to be about average for a solid performing buckshot shell. So by the numbers, we're not looking too bad, but clearly you can see that there's not a whole lot going on right where we kind of would need it to be. So as for a 10-inch circle core of this pattern, not looking too amazing so far, but let's throw an actual deer template up to see what it would look like if you would have taken this shot out in a hunting type of scenario. Alright, so here's our deer template, and if we line it up with our point of aim, we have a front leg at the bottom, and his neck just starts on the right side, and we would have hit him with 13 pellets at least, which is a lot of buckshot flying down range and hitting your deer. Now this would clearly still be a dead deer. We had a number of these back here get into the back edge of the lungs, liver area, maybe one down there got into the edge of the heart, as well as several more through the upper shoulder into the neck area. So clearly that deer I don't think would have made it very far, but yet again, you see a big giant hole in the middle of the pattern right where your lungs are. So although it absolutely would have gotten you the deer, you may or may not have had the lung type of shot that you might have been going for here. But still, that is a very dead deer, I'd say. But let's throw the hog template up here for those of you down south and out west a little bit who might be hunting hogs with this load and choke combo, and see if it's pretty much the same story with you or not. Alright, so here's our hog template, and yeah, it is pretty much the exact same story here. You would have had several of them through the very back end of the vitals, as well as a couple getting up closer to that neck area. So I definitely think you would have a dead hog here, but these things are pretty tough, and if you don't get that heart lung shot on them quite perfectly, they can run a pretty good ways. So although you would have absolutely gotten this hog, you might have been doing a little bit more tracking than what you might have initially planned on doing. So overall here, initial thoughts on this butt kicker choke, it does kind of look like it is doing something to help these shells out a little bit. I think this is a better result than what we had seen previously from them, but we need more testing still. And the lack of pellets in this core area on this pattern could have just been luck of the draw on this particular one shot that we took, because it's not going to be an exact carbon copy on every single shell that we would shoot. Either way, not looking terrible for a start, but we need more testing on it, I would say. But clearly, it's plenty good enough of a combination to hunt out at 40 or 50 yards with all day long. Okay, and here's the wad from that shell, and as you can see, they are kind of these half-length short wads. I don't think they really do much other than kind of help coax the pellets out of the shell and out down the barrel. That porting in that kicks choke definitely caught some of the edges just a little bit here, which could maybe have played into why we saw a flyer or two and 1 or 2 pellets missing from our core area, but I really doubt it. This is a really thin material wad, so I don't think it was doing much as for our pattern, but still pretty interesting to see here how Federal uses these kind of short wads in those Power-Shok 15 pellet double-aught buck shells. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that pattern right there? It's definitely a pretty solid pattern for a pretty basic buckshot shell like that. 24 inches at 40 yards, that's gonna absolutely do what you need it to do on just about anything you would use these shells for. Now, like I've already said several times, the core doesn't look all that amazing, but I'm not ready to blame that on the choke just yet. We need to do more testing with it and see how it does with different loadings and stuff like that. But as for a start, I do think that buck kicker is doing a little bit of something for our pattern. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested one of these buck kicker chokes? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from it? And has it made any kind of a difference for you? And what other shells might you want to see us test through this choke? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.